So now we have a Docker Compose. We'll have a Docker version of Redis running. Next thing we want to do is let's test out the connection. So we'll call it test redis.py. And Flake8 is not installed, so we'll install that. Also, let's get my formatter working, so install that as well. And with Python, I think according to the Git repository, say, I think it's going to be like a connect or something. Connect. Okay, there we go. So Redis. So we're going to look for that. So redis.redis. Then this looks like it's going to be the connect for me. So what I'm going to do, I'll just start with that. Import Redis, and then what I'll do, I'll go get Redis connection, and there seems to be a database name that's associated, and the idea would be return redis.redis, and host is going to be the localhost. Personally, I just use double quotes for quoting strings. Port 6379 was the magic number, 6379. And then database is going to be database. And we'll go from there. And I think my indentation was wrong. I know what's wrong. I was missing the colon at the end. And the auto formatting is working correctly. All right. And then getting kickstarted with this thing, looks like we are going to do our set and bar. So this is going to set some value. So Redis is supposed to be a key value store that's going to be storing a lot of the values in memory. And that's one of the reasons why it's super fast, and it's going to be useful for things like caching. And yeah, it's supposed to be faster than when you're going to a database and looking for values and stuff like that. So this is something that I'm kind of interested in experimenting with. Before I jump into using Redis with an application that's live, I want to get an understanding of the fundamental characteristics of what Redis does. So I'm going to follow this example over here. So I just call this the key value, the key, I'll call it foo. And then I'm going to do get a connection. So I'm going to go C is equal to get Redis connection, and I'll do like that for a connection. I'm going to set key, and I'm going to set follow the example, which is going to be bar. And then let's also see what kind of value that comes out of this, because what it looks like is, yeah, so there's some kind of boolean that comes out, and then we get a string back. So let's also get print c.get, and that should be what is going on there. And then hit F9. For me, that's what's going to be used to run the script. And looks like we get something that's expected. So it returns true when I set a value, and then get a value back, which is the key, and then bar. So there's something kind of interesting here, is that the strings that come back looks like it's coming back as a binary string. So that's one interesting thing about Redis. Okay, so now we just sort of started this out with like a simple get according to this example over here. And what I want to do next is let's sort of see what other values I can put into here. So let's see. Can I do something like, we'll have this connection still alive, c.set, and I'll go integer and say what happens if I do a 2, and yeah, and I'll go print, and then print c.get integer. What else do I want to put? Let's see what happens if we do a float 2.0, and do a float and push F9. Oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. So we can see here, this is the original value that we put in the first time around, which is the bar as a string, comes back as a binary string. And the next one is we put an integer in, and that comes back as a 2 string. And then the same thing if we do this with a floating point integer, a floating point number, it comes back as 2.0. To me, that's a little bit unintuitive because what it means is that when we store values inside of Redis, everything's going to be sort of a binary string. So one thing in my mind that I need to keep track of is when I store data in Redis and pull the values out, and that means I need to typecast them back to their original values. And then sort of the other annoying thing is that when you're setting values and stored inside of this Redis database, you have to know what kind of values you're storing where, and then how to bring them back. That's kind of one thing in my mind as well, and I'm sort of probably need to think about how that's going to get handled. And another, these are just really simple values that sort of got put in, and so this also makes me curious as to what kind of other types of data objects we can put in. So things like a list or a dict or something like that. And let's see what happens when we do that. So let's give that a try. And just for simplicity, I'm going to comment out this code. I'm going to go print c.set. I'm going to say, let's try a list and see what happens. I'm going to put in a list with 1, 2, and 3. And then let's see what happens if I get that. And I have a feeling that this is going to be weird because everything is stored as a binary string. So let's see what happens. And yep, sort of what I expected. So it doesn't convert into a bytes very nicely. And then so I got something weird back. And then I'm probably going to expect the same thing to happen if I do it with a dictionary. So I'll do something like this. Hello world, and then we'll call this dict, and we're going to call this a get, then see what happens here. So I'm expecting something similar to happen. I'm going to run the code, and yep, same thing. So that's kind of unpleasant in terms of working with data objects with Python and Redis. Is there's going to be some kind of translation that's needed to work with Redis. Okay, so I guess there are some other strategies to this. Probably the first one that comes to mind is we could just serialize everything using JSON. So what I could do instead is I could do something like import JSON. And what the JSON library does is just allows me to convert any sort of data object, basic Python types of data into a string. So my idea is I'm going to do something like, if I go json.dumps, and this is going to turn things into a string, and say if I have a list of like 1, 2, 4, print, and do a bracket like this, and it basically just turns it into a string. And so if we do something like this, print c.put set, and we'll call this JSON list. And then I'll get rid of that, and not a pint. Probably again thinking of beer already. See if that is sufficient. Oops, there is going to be something off with my brackets, so I'm going to need to fix that. JSON dumps. This should close the set. I don't need this one here. That's about right. And then print c.get JSON list. So this should give me the string back. Push F9. And that's expected, which is good. And this also means I can probably convert this back into the list data as JSON load s. And this will convert the string data back into a list. And lo and behold, that works. So one strategy that we can think of off the top of my head is that for simple gets and sets with anything other than simple strings and integers and floats, we'll need to do some kind of data manipulation and converting things using the JSON dumps function should allow us to do things like add lists and maybe dictionaries as well. And I'll probably do a quick check on that, and that assumption should be right because everything's just going to be sort of the same thing. So if I go dict, and we'll just go like this, hello world. Yep. Dict. And after that, I'll just comment this part out, and bang. Yep, that is the output that is sort of expected.